John Stockton is one of the more interesting all-time great players from the standpoint of people seem to have him ranked all over the place. Some believe he's the second or third best point guard ever, while others have him outside the top 5, even top 8. This video is not going to determine any kind of ranking or anything like that, but it's intended to analyze his greatest strengths and kind of narrow down the things I feel he was best at and deserves the most praise for, some of which younger fans may not be aware of. The Utah Jazz in the 1990s were exceptionally good with their off-ball action and movement. Their screening in the middle of the floor, particularly in the paint and near the semicircle, was arguably what made them most dangerous. These clips really accentuate that. They were relentless at setting cross screens and back screens, usually for Karl Malone to get a mismatch advantage down low, but also with the opponent expecting the ball to go into Malone so much, Stockton with his vision would often find others for easy baskets, including the screeners in that action, or cutters and curlers when the defense would overload on Malone or simply fall asleep. He found teammates slipping backdoor all the time. Sometimes Stockton himself would be a screener in these situations as well, which made it even tougher for opponents to stay connected to them. The key to all great point guards, especially traditional ones, is that they spot something developing before the defense can react, and you see that here by Stockton with these assists to teammates sneaking around the basket. Now obviously back then the spray out passes that we see all the time now to create open three-point looks weren't as common, but Stockton was actually one of the first to excel at kicking out to shooters on the perimeter when he got into the paint. The Jazz were not chucking up threes by any means. In fact, they ranked toward the bottom in three-point attempts during their heyday with Stockton and Malone, but they were pretty efficient on their three-pointers back then, ranking in the top 10 throughout the late 90s. You've probably heard a million times about the two-man game between Stockton and Malone. They had an unreal connection, arguably the best in NBA history, and Stockton would find Malone in an assortment of ways, including standard entry passes into the post, where Malone would often hit fall-away jumpers, textbook pick and rolls, kickouts to the mid-range, slips, on fast breaks, especially with Malone trailing the play, and through outlet hit-ahead passes. Stockton was a classic point guard, so scoring was never his first agenda. The most points he ever scored in a game was 34 against the Sacramento Kings on March 17, 1990, and the most points he ever averaged in a season was 17.2. But when the Jazz needed a bucket from him, he often delivered. One of the ways he would score a lot was off cuts. In fact, one may argue he was the best cutting point guard of all time. This aligned with Utah's relentless movement and outstanding execution. There's no documented advanced stats for this from back then, but I would guess the Jazz led the NBA in scoring off cuts throughout the 90s. In general, Stockton had a soft touch and kept everything very basic and fundamental. From a scoring standpoint, it was a no-frills kind of game. The biggest thing was that everyone expected pass, so defenders sagged off him a lot, and he would react quickly to that coverage and attack when he saw an opening to the basket. He had a nice floater too. And he was a very good perimeter shooter. Back then, teams didn't rely on the three-point shot like they do now, but Stockton had excellent range. In 7 of his 19 NBA seasons, he shot over 40% from three-point distance. The most he ever took in one season was 227, his total in 1994-95. So get this though, last season, 227 threes would have been the 155th most in the league. In 94-95, Stockton's 227 three-point attempts were tied for 58th most. One of the most unforgettable three-pointers made in the 90s was by Stockton when he sent the Jazz to the NBA Finals in 1997 with a series-clinching buzzer-beating three in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals against the Houston Rockets. To me, it's one of the most memorable announcer calls from that era. Let's take a listen to Greg Gumbel on NBC as it happened live.
On that half court. Stockton, open three. Hit! John Stockton sends the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals.
To top it all off, Stockton was a very good defender. Now, he wasn't the strongest or quickest, and he didn't have much length, but he had terrific instincts and anticipation, which is why he led the league in steals twice and was named to the All-Defensive Second Team 5 times. He is still the NBA's all-time steals leader with 3,265 of them. He had a game on February 12, 1991 with 9 steals against the Rockets. The $64,000 question is whether Stockton would be as good now if he played in this era compared to back then. If I had to take a guess on what that would look like, I think his shooting would be maximized much more, but I would presume his defense wouldn't be nearly as strong. There's just so much length in the NBA now that at 6'1", he'd struggle as a smaller guard going up against switches. But I do think he'd excel in a pace and space system. He'd be fine getting into the paint and creating from there, but orchestrating for all that down-low action would probably not be utilized. In 19 NBA seasons, he was named an All-Star 10 times, including in 1993 when he and Malone were the co-All-Star Game MVPs, with the game being played in Salt Lake City. He was a 9-time assist leader, twice made the All-NBA first team, and 6 times made the second team. While he never won an NBA championship, which has historically been a knock on his all-time ranking, he helped the Jazz reach the NBA Finals in back-to-back years in 1997 and 1998 when they lost to Michael Jordan's Bulls both years. He also won 2 Olympic gold medals with Team USA in 1992 and 1996. So that'll wrap up this video. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe.